I'm channeling all my chaotic energy into this one so that all of my test knits are done well. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel by MWoo. I'm MWoo, aka Marianne, and here we talk about all things crafty, primarily knitting. I have a traditional podcast episode for you guys, which in essence means I'll be talking you through my finished objects, work in progresses, and maybe some future yarn planning / yarn acquisitions towards the end. It should be a pretty beefy episode, so let's just get started. Before I delve into the project related stuff, I just quickly wanted to touch on what I'm wearing today. This is my Lille Frill sweater by Camille Designs. I got the opportunity to test knit this for her back in maybe September, October. Maybe a little later, October, November sometime. But it's this beautiful all over mohair blouse sweater style with this really gorgeous frill on the front. It has like mohair held single on the front to give it a little bit more of that sheer design, and then the rest of the sweater is held double. I knit mine in Drops Kid Silk mohair in the color 37, which is I think called North Sea, and I adore it. It's super cozy, super fun. I actually am not usually a mohair person, but I want to say that this is probably one of my most worn sweaters, specifically because it's like that perfect sweet spot between being like very comfy and casual, but also looks a little bit fancy and formal. So like I'll wear this to work, or I'll wear this when I have like an outing or something. I really, really like it. I would highly recommend if you're interested. Another thing that I quickly just wanted to touch on before getting into the projects is last episode I talked about the Pimpom shawl that I test knit for Laura Penrose. If you're interested in that pattern, that shawl pattern has officially been released. I think it came out this last Wednesday, and so if that's something you want to knit up, go check it out. I love that experience. It's like all garter with short row shapings to make the scallop details along the edge. Adored it. Yeah, let's get into the finished objects. I actually just realized I don't have that first one, so I'm gonna go grab it. One sec. Okay, I'm exposing myself in the fact that I'm wearing pajama bottoms on the bottom, so I'm really like Christmas colory today. But anyways, the first finished object that I have for you guys is the Wishful sweater by Lily K Makes, also known as Lily K France, I believe is her full name. And it's this gorgeous, all over, really fluffy, airy, kind of oversized sweater that I had the opportunity to test knit for her last month. In the last podcast episode, I was finishing up the body. So I managed to get both sleeves done, and I'll just get it out there. This pattern was also released really recently on the 8th, I believe, of March. And so if you guys are interested in this one, you can also check that one out. But like I said, it's this really gorgeous all over blown alpaca design. It's quite oversized, super comfy. It has a really relaxed vibe to it because it has like rolled edges around the collar and the sleeves, and it's just super light and airy. I really, really enjoyed making this one and wearing this one. Overall construction has saddle shoulder detailing as well as set-in sleeves. It was the first time I had the chance to do that, and I really enjoyed it. I've never thought about doing short row shaping around the sleeves, but it was really therapeutic to do. I really enjoy doing short rows just in general, and overall this was like a really quick knit. It's knit on 5.5 millimeter needles, and the yarn that I specifically used was Drops Air, which is like an alpaca wool nylon blend, and that combination of the needle size and the kind of fluffier yarn knit this so quickly. Like the process was so smooth sailing that I didn't get stuck on Sleeve Island. If you guys have followed in the past, you know that Sleeve Island is sometimes the death of me, but I cast it on. I think the short row shaping was really fun to cast on, and it got me through and it moved so quickly, and I really enjoyed this one. The pattern itself has two options for sleeves. You can do like a straight sleeve. I decided to do the balloon sleeve. I could have made the cuffs like a little bit tighter. They're quite like big, and so you don't get the full balloon effect, but this has been my go-to sweater since casting off. I wear it constantly around the house because it's really warm, but it's also very light. I intentionally chose like a light off-white gray color so that it would be really versatile and wearable, and I adore it. Quickly to mention, the pattern comes in sizes 1 to 9, and depending on the size, the ease changes, but it generally ranges from like 5 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. And she mentions that you should choose the size based off your upper bust versus the fuller bust. This one you want it to fit a little bit higher because it is fairly oversized. And she mentions this in, I don't know if the pattern, but she talked about it when she was releasing the pattern on Instagram, that the alpaca yarn, or at least this blown type of yarn, grows a lot during blocking, which was my experience. And so you kind of want to make sure you hit gauge or are like slightly smaller if you want something that's a little bit more close to the size, because once it's blocked it will relax a lot. But I love this. I'm excited to see how this yarn will wear because I've been wearing it a lot. I can't tell if it's pilling. It has like some fluff along the edges there, but because it's blown originally, I don't know if it's just like part of the fabric or that it's like fluffing out. Regardless, love it. It is just so cozy and is a great home sweater, and I would make it again if I didn't have so many other project plans in the foreseeable future, but would highly recommend if you're interested in something really fun and cozy and wanted it something quickly, because the blown alpaca yarn is so great to work with. The next finished object that I have is not one that I have with me anymore, and that was because it was a gift knit. In the last podcast episode, this was, I think, at the very beginning of itself. Like I had just gotten the collar and the yoke done. And this is the Lille Dahlia pattern by Holme Samsoe. Samsoe? I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong. I'm so sorry. This is a really beautiful like 4-in-1 kind of pattern. She gives you the option of doing a sweater slash top, a onesie, a cardigan, and a dress, all for children's sizes 3 months to about 4 years. And I knit this for one of my best friends who is having a baby girl in the springtime, and it spoke out to me. I also wanted to get the pattern because it seems so versatile, like it has so many options for children's clothes. I thought it was going to be a great staple to just have on hand if you ever wanted to make like a onesie for someone or a cardigan or whatnot. And I still stand by that. I don't have too many children to knit for right now. I guess I could knit for my niece and nephew, but my sister knows how to knit. And anyways, I love the pattern, and overall the feature of it is that it has this really beautiful like almost leaf kind of lace detailing on the yoke of it, and it's so cute. I'll insert a photo of the finished object here. This specific yarn that I used for it is the same that I used for my Lille blouse that I talked about in the last episode, which was the Emilia and Philomene's Madame Philippon in Eugenia. It was a 50% cotton, 50% wool or merino fingering weight yarn, and it was a beautiful yarn to work with. It was a tonal yarn that I used. It was like a purpley pink and had ever so slight amount of color pooling, but it was pretty subtle. It was a bit of an expensive yarn, but 100% worth it for that little cardigan. I also messed up the button band on that cardigan. After I had like knit the first one, I realized that was the one that was supposed to have the holes if you're like technically making them the way that like garments are supposed to have. I think the button band is supposed to be on the left. I don't remember. But regardless, I had put it on the wrong side, and so instead of frogging the button band, I ended up doing snap closures, which was a good workaround and probably easier to work with when you have like a scrambling, rolling Todd around. But would highly recommend that pattern. I really had a good experience with that one, and I just wanted to throw that in here even though I can't physically show you the object anymore. I've been a pretty busy knitter the last couple weeks. I swear I've been actually like living my life and also doing my job and stuff like that. I just have seemed to find my flow in terms of efficiency when I actually sit down and knit. But the next one up is a ribbed beanie that I made for my grandma. It's actually in the middle of blocking, so I'll quickly grab it to show you guys, and then I'll probably put it back down because it's in that very vulnerable like wet drapey stage. But it is this gorgeous purple 1x1 ribbed hat, and I followed the classic ribbed hat pattern by Purl Soho, which is a free pattern for a DK weight ribbed hat. It gives you a lot of options to doing like a solid color, two-tone, striped. It's a great free pattern, would definitely recommend. And I knit this up in this beautiful deep tonal purple. This specific yarn is from Fireweed Fiber Co., which is a Canadian-based hand dyer in Winnipeg, I believe, and this is their Sweet Pea sock yarn base, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, held double, and in the color Aubergine, which is this beautiful deep purple that I am obsessed with. I really wanted to make myself a pair of socks with this, but it ended up turning into a hat, and I will explain in a second once I put this down. The story behind this hat is actually because my mom is going back to China in a month or so, and she had texted me, honestly, like 3 days ago now. It's crazy how time is flying so quickly, but she texted me being like, do you want to knit something for grandma? And I can bring it over, maybe a hat or a pair of socks. And I thought that was a great idea. So I went through my special skeins, which they're basically all of my like single sock yarn skeins that are all like fun colors and hand dyed yarn. And I picked up that specific color for her, so I would knit her a hat. This is, as I mentioned, a free pattern by Purl Soho, and it was really easy to follow, a really quick one to knit up. I actually, when I was knitting it, worried that I was gonna run out of yarn, and in retrospect, I would have started with like a crown down hat, like a top down hat. This specific pattern has you start at the brim and work your way up to the crown, so it's bottom up. I had the like right amount of yarn. I actually think I had like 10 or so grams left, so I could have made it a little bit longer, but it was a really fast, really fun, like mindless knit, and I would highly recommend it. It took me maybe about 3 hours in all things considering, because I'm trying to think about like all the podcasts and like stuff I was watching, so it maybe took about like 3-4 hours of like actual knitting, so came up pretty quickly, and I am obsessed. It has like a pretty big fold up rim when you have it on, and I can't wait to give that to her. So typically the Muscle Burrow is like my go-to gift knit, but I like doing it on fingering weight, but it's like a lot of single stockinette, and I was worried that I wasn't gonna have enough time to finish it up because I have a lot of other like work in progresses and future plans in mind. And so I wanted to knit something on DK weight. Turns out Yolanda T, who is the designer of the Muscle Burrow, has a ribbed hat that's like a similar style, but not the Muscle Burrow. I don't remember what the name of the pattern is. I'll put it on the screen in editing, but that one is a top down. So in hindsight, I would have done that one, but again, this one was also a free pattern, so I can't complain about that. Last thing I will mention is that I knit kind of a weird size. So this pattern actually comes, I think, with 4 or 5 sizes, and it has 3 adult sizes, like a small, medium, large. I knit like a middle ground between the small and the medium. Because it's a free pattern, I'll just give you what I did. I did 114 cast on stitches at the start, which meant when it came to the decreasing section, I had segments of 18 and 20 stitches. So this small one, I think, has you cast on 108 stitches at the start, and then decreasing, you divide into 6 sections of 18 for the decreases, versus the medium one, I think, is 120 stitches I've cast on, and the segments are 6 segments of 20 stitches for the decreases. So yeah, I did kind of like that in between. Technically it means my hat isn't totally symmetrical, but I think it's fine. I did like 18, 20, 18, 20, 18, 20, so that it's still even, just not totally even. Does that make sense? It worked out for me, so if you guys want to make that mod, that's what I did. It's also on my Reveries page if you want to see more specific details about that. But would recommend it as a free pattern. It was great, and I definitely would make it again. I think I really want a ribbed hat for myself, so maybe I'll do this one. Or maybe I'll do the Yolanda Teague one. Who knows? The next and final kind of finished object isn't really a finished object, and you'll see why in a second. This is another winter accessory, which is kind of ironic because we're now really entering the spring. It's kind of snowing outside right now, but it's not gonna stay. It's like plus 8 degrees outside. So anyways, it is a pair of felted mitts. These are the felted Nova mitts. Now, the reason why I'm including them as finished object is because I finished all the knitting, but they're not technically finished because, as you can see, they haven't been felted. They are ginormous right now. They're like kind of insane. But this is the second time I've made this pattern. This is a free pattern by Webb, and they're just giant felted mitts. So you basically knit them up huge and then you felt them. So I'm doing laundry after this video, so I'll throw them in the wash then. I'll either put in snippets of the felted version here if I get them done by the time this podcast goes live, or I'll show them in the next podcast. But I really enjoyed them. I actually knit these up the first time back in March last year for my husband, and they have turned out to be the most perfect dog walking gloves or mittens because they're super warm, they're super like just easy to slip on and off. They don't have any like ribbing on the end here, so it's just kind of like a small oven mitt basically. And I was constantly stealing his and felt that maybe it was the time to make myself a pair because I had leftover Knitpicks Wool of the Andes worsted weight, which is what I used for his mitts. So I was like, I'll just make myself. You can tell though that I did run out of yarn a little bit. The thumbs are a different color. Those are done in Fisherman Wools, the Lion Brand Fisherman Wool in the color, I think Nature's Brown, or maybe this is the brown one. I'm not sure. One of the brown ones. And funny enough, I actually did one first in like all of the Knitpicks yarn, and then I got to the second one, I realized I ran out, so I had to like cut and like amend this with the other one so they would be matching. I have realized that I'm a lot more confident of a knitter now because that whole process didn't scare me, but had I had to do that last year, I would have been like petrified. But yeah, really excited to see how this works out. For those of you who aren't like familiar with the felting process, a lot of animal fibers are like very grippy and toothy. If you like zoom in on the individual strands, you'll see that they're kind of scaly. And so when you apply friction and heat and you like rub them together, the scales actually interlock to make like that felted texture that you get, which is really great for felted mittens if you want to make felted trivets or whatever you kind of want to felt. I think traditionally when you would go get felt from like a craft store, it used to be wool. It's polyester now, but that's why you can felt wool and other animal products or animal fibers, but it also means why you have to hand wash stuff because you could unintentionally felt too, which is not great if you're not trying to felt things. But it's a really cool process. Definitely would recommend like trying to make a pair of felted mittens or a felted pair of slippers or socks if that's something that interests you. Or if you see those like dryer balls, you can technically make them yourself. They do take a lot of yarn, but if you kind of want to experiment with the process, would definitely recommend. So I'll keep you posted how this goes. When I tried doing the felting process last time, it took way longer than the pattern told me to, and I think that was partly because I don't even know, maybe because I didn't have enough friction going on. I find that it's more friction that felts versus like temperature, but the temperature helps. So that is my not felted Nova mittens right now. They will soon to be felted. Oh, I forgot to mention, those were made with the worsted weight Knitpicks Help Double, if you're wondering. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Moving on into work in progresses. All of my work in progresses right now, I'm going to be totally transparent, are test knits. I kind of went a little test knit application heavy last month because I think also in the last podcast, all of my work in progress were test knits. I'm just in a very test knitty mood. There's been a lot of great patterns coming out and I have just been applying for them just because I was like, you know what, I'll try. And also I've been allowing myself to apply, especially if I have the yarn in stash already. So that's what's going on. I'm trying to dial back on the test knit applications because there's still a lot of stuff that I personally want to knit for like spring, as mentioned in my spring knitting plans, which if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up above as well as in the description box below. But we have already committed to a whole bunch of them, so I'm in the process, but I'm still really excited about all of them, which is like a great, and I think the deadline's been good for my knitting productivity because I haven't been able to dilly-dally in the same way that I historically have, but I'm also not stress knitting right now, which has been a really good balance. So with that all out of the way, the next test knit is a vest. Ooh. So this is the Ultimate Vest test knit for Hunter May. I believe she actually primarily does crochet, but she has designed this really cool pattern where it's a made-to-measure customizable vest. And a little bit of a backstory on this one. A couple weeks ago, I out of the blue decided to swatch my fisherman wool with the Make It tweed and some mohair that I had left over from my Eva cardigan to see what kind of fabric that would develop. And I fell in love with the swatch. Now, because I had that swatch and I kind of had this vest in my mind, I've been wanting to make a vest since fall. I actually made this seal slip over last fall, but my mom/dad ended up taking it, so then I was kind of vestless again, and I've been thinking about doing something with the fisherman wools. But anyway, so I had this swatch that I really liked. I was like, this would be perfect for a vest. However, because it was 3 strands of yarn held together in an unconventional way that I don't really think fisherman wool is used that heavily in vests. It's a very rustic sweater kind of texture. That I was I don't know what pattern that I would do with this. So at that same time when I was kind of thinking about all this, Hunter May released this test knit call for this ultimate vest pattern that I was maybe that's perfect. So I applied, just kind of seeing what would happen. I think even if I didn't get it, I was going to buy the pattern and try to make this vest. And I fortunately got it. So I have been in the process of making this making this vest based off her pattern. And it's a really cool concept because she basically sends you a PDF where you can put in all your measurements and kind of the amount of ease and the gauge of your swatch and all that stuff. It spits out a pattern that you can knit, and it's customizable in the sense that you could do crochet, you can do knitting, you can also do, I think it's called Tunisian crochet, the one where you don't crochet into every hook, but you have a lot of live stitches and then crochet into that. Anyways, so I have made quite a bit of progress, and this is what my vest is looking like right now. This also kind of ticks off a check mark in my goals and aspirations because it's bottom up, which is a new design or a construction that I've never done before, and I've been having a great time. So first and foremost, let's give a second for this beautiful fabric. I am obsessed with the tweedy, fluffy, rustic vibe. I had a very simple vision in mind for this. I wanted a straight stockinette V-neck, kind of oversized pullover with 2x2 ribbing. That's the vision that I'm going for. So I have made all of the front now. You can see the beginnings of the V-neck shape there. It's maybe a little easier if I do that. And then I am currently working on the back piece, in which once I get to the shoulders, I'll be seaming those together. And it's just a matter of adding all of the ribbing along the armholes, the bottom, and then the V-neck on. I'm really thrilled with how it's turning out. I think that fisherman wool can be really itchy, and I think the mohair has been a good way to soften it up and give it a little bit more visual texture. I'm just obsessed with this tweedy. I got this for my birthday last year, and I've been waiting for a project to use it, and I love it. Love it, love it, love it so much. It's been pretty smooth sailing. It's been a lot of just stockinette. I will say, because the fabric is a pretty toothy fabric, I've been getting a little bit of yarn friction on my tension finger, so I've been having to put a band-aid on it so it doesn't get too bad. But overall, really enjoy it. Again, it's been pretty quick. This one's also on 5.5 millimeter needles, so I could have probably sized up on the needles to give it a little bit more drape, but I'm really happy with the overall fabric, and I think that a good block will definitely relax it, because that was my experience with my step-by-step sweater, which was also done in the fisherman's wool. The pattern is on schedule to release in mid-April if you guys are interested in checking it out. And I also know that she has a whole bunch of other either already published or in the work ultimate patterns, in the sense that she has ultimate sweater, ultimate cardigan. This one's the ultimate vest. So if you're interested in trying a made to measure pattern, I would recommend go checking those out. The last thing I will add to that though is that from my current experience, I wouldn't necessarily recommend these patterns for beginners because it is a little bit more like open to interpretation and how you want to like design. It's a little bit more pared back in terms of the details. So for example, she'll mention at a certain place that you'll need to make a decrease. She'll just mention like decrease, and it's kind of up to you as a pseudo designer to figure out how you want that decrease to go. And so if you have no experience or you're very early on in like your knitting or crochet journey, that can probably be a little intimidating. And so I would recommend maybe knitting 1 or 2 things beforehand or becoming familiar with how to read your work before diving into this specific pattern, just because the lack of detail is like good in some sense if you want that freedom, but it could be kind of a hindrance in other sense if you are not sure what to do with that freedom, if that makes sense. So I would definitely recommend trying a couple other patterns before diving into this one, just so you get an idea of like what you're looking for and how to like actually create what you have in your head. But overall, it's been a really great experience. There's been very few like issues so far. I think there's been like a handful of like just small calculations things that we've been fixing as we're going through the test knit. And I'm really excited for this one to come out and see how this turns out. I'm so close to the end. Once this is done, I'm going to be moving on to my other pattern or other projects because I'm trying to embrace a little bit more of the monogamy in the sense that like working on one pattern until more or less completion before moving on to the other. I find that I'm working faster that way because there's definitely, when you're going between projects, there's that little bit of friction in terms of like, what was I doing, and trying to remember and getting back into the flow. And so if you're always just working on the one, you kind of don't lose that flow. But I digress. I'm kind of tangenting. The next 2 work in progresses are just quick updates because, as I said, I've been primarily focusing on that vest to get it done. This next one is another test knit. This is the, ooh, I have to get it out. I'm housing this in my really beautiful Hide and Hammer roll top bag, which I friggin' adore this project bag, but I will say it's not the easiest to like grab things in and out of. But anyways, this is my Aconite tee by Audrey Borrego. It is in a very like hard to show phase right now. Let's see if I can try to make it a little bit better. Okay, so this is the neck hole. I'm gonna try to like try it on. It looks like this. It's got this like kind of tweedy inspired, not tweedy, it's kind of got this tweed inspired kind of texture all over it, and it's going to be, I haven't decided actually if it's going to be a short sleeve or a long sleeve. The pattern kind of gives you the option to do both. But anyways, like I said, this is a test knit for Audrey. It's this beautiful, I'll give you a closer up look at the texture. It's got a little bit of color work, a little bit of slip stitching, like just texture with like purl bumps. I adore this. I am knitting this in Knitting for Olive merino. The recommended is cotton merino, but I wanted something a little bit more warmth. And this is a fingering weight all over pullover that I think is going to be a perfect weight for the summer. So Audrey had posted a photo of this on her Instagram, I want to say like the end of January, and I fell in love with it. Her version is like a white and blue colored, and I decided to do like this maroony red, which is the Knitting for Olive Claret, I think, and Knitting for Olive Marzipan, which is also left over from a Mauricia cardigan. The sheer amount of yarn, excess yarn that I bought for that cardigan is kind of insane because I knit that cardigan, I've knit like 2 baby bear bonnets. I'm using it for this and I'm using it for that vest. Like, I don't know how I did calculations for that. The fact that I was like maybe, I want to say like 2 full skeins, maybe 3 almost skeins like over is mind-boggling. But nevertheless, making progress. This has been mostly on hold because, like I said, I've been working on the other test knits, but I'm really excited to get this working on a little bit more. I don't have too much to say to this one. I'll quickly mention the like size measurements. This one, if I can get the pattern open, this comes in 10 different sizes. The recommended ease is 10 to 15 centimeters, and the finished bust size for this garment ranges from 85 centimeters to 175 centimeters. I am knitting size 2 for her, and I don't have much to say. It's been a really smooth knit so far. I will say this one has been a little bit more mentally challenging in the sense that I need to like actually focus on the chart repeats. It has like a 14 or some, no, that's not true. It has like a 26 row repeat for the color work or the patterning. And so I personally haven't been able to get into the groove where I can just like memorize it. So it requires a little bit of focus, which is why it's kind of been on the back burner, but I'm really excited to get back to this. I think it'll be a great piece. I've been wanting to make something of that like fingering weight like texture because I want it to be warm, so well, but I don't want it to be heavy. Like I don't want like a chunky knit, if that makes sense. But yeah, nothing. Sorry, this one's like kind of a not too fun of an update because I haven't been making too much progress. I did learn a new cast on method with this one. So I traditionally use the long tail cast on, which is like a great versatile cast on, but this pattern calls for the German twisted cast on, which is also a long tail cast on, but you have to make like an extra loop, and it adds like a little bit more of like a stretchiness to it, and I love it. I've been using it for everything since I've learned it. It can be a little finicky at first. I think Very Pink Tutorials or Very Pink Techniques has a really great tutorial on this if you're interested in trying it out, but I think that's my new favorite cast on, if I'm not gonna lie. It is a little yarn hungry, and so I like measured the amount of yarn that I thought I would have used for a long tail cast on, and it needed more. Just wanted to caveat that. So it's not a great one if you're trying to be yarn conservative. So hence for my ribbed beanie for my grandma, I ended up doing just a normal long tail cast on because I was scared I was gonna run out of yarn. But that is more or less it for work in progresses. Just a really quick update on my Eva cardigan. I always put everything like slightly out of reach. Ryan, if you're watching, please skip to here. You know the drill by now. Thank you. This is a cardigan that I'm making for my husband. I started this back last year, and well, he knows that I'm making this and he knows that it is a cardigan. I haven't actually shown him what it looks like, hence why I'm asking him to skip to the end. But I made a couple more stripes in it. I think when I showed it to you guys like in the podcast a while ago, I want to say I was maybe only like 3 stripes in, so I'm making a decent amount of progress. I ideally want this to be longer, like a longer cardigan, but I don't know if I have enough yarn for that. But this is, sorry, before I get into that, this is the Eva cardigan by PetiteKnit. It is a raglan shaped oversized cardigan. I am making size small for my husband. It probably won't be too oversized since he has like a bigger shoulder width than like a woman does, but it should still fit. I had him close his eyes and try it on a while ago, and it fits perfectly right now, so I think it will relax a little bit once it has been blocked. And I am knitting this in Sandnes Garn's Sunday held double in the color Almond, which is this really beautiful like off-white, and Into the Woods. Yeah, I always want to say Out of the Woods, but I know it's not that because that's the Taylor Swift song. So this is Into the Woods, which is this really beautiful like brown, but it has like the slightest green undertone. I don't know if the camera is catching it up. I think it's so fun. I mean, it's just a brown, but because it's just ever so slightly interesting, I really enjoy it. I'm making, as you can see, a striped version. This is really heavily inspired by a Pinterest photo that I saw that I'll insert on the screen here, where it's like the top of the yoke is in the more like neutral color, then it had like green stripes throughout, and then the cuffs as well as the button band trim was all in the same like cream. I don't know if I'm gonna make a button version, maybe just like an open cardigan. We'll see when the time comes, but been having a lot of fun with this one overall. I just haven't been prioritizing it because I have so many other test knits going on, and this has a lot of purling, and I haven't been enjoying that. I did try to do, what is it called? Portuguese knitting, where you have the like yarn tensioned around your neck for the purling rows, and it actually helped a lot. But sorry, my nose is itchy. But it is not something I'm totally used to. So I'm hoping that this doesn't have too weird of a wonky gauge, because I've been bouncing between like every type of style of knitting, trying to like figure out the most streamlined way. I've been doing my normal continental. I've been trying to do flick knitting in a couple sections. I've done Portuguese knitting. I've done just like English throwing, so not the like flicking. Anyways, if the gauge is everywhere. I actually didn't even swatch for this one, so this has just been all over the place project. I'm channeling all my chaotic energy into this one so that all of my test knits are done well. That's my excuse, at least. But there's that. I want to get this done in the spring season, so but I'm not going to put that total pressure on me. Like, if it's not done, that's fine. But that is my Eva cardigan for my husband. Okay. Woo! Next section, yarn acquisition and plans. So I've been good. I have no yarn acquisitions to mention. Actually, I think that's a lie. I have 2 yarn acquisitions to mention, both of which was just to pick up an extra skein for test knits. So according to my rules, that is fine. But overall, I've been really good. I haven't really had too many come in. A quick update on the inventory. So if you guys haven't been following along, one of my goals for this year is to prioritize my current yarn inventory / stash a little bit more. That's not to say that I'm not allowed to buy yarn. I'm just trying to use it up a little bit more. How I'm trying to structure that is to hopefully get my stash under 100 units before buying like a significant quantity of more yarn. It is still a guideline. Like, if I don't totally abide by it, like, no one's gonna come after me. I hope. Please don't come after me. But it's just kind of like a mindset change to hopefully try to reduce yarn spending, because last year I was in the bad habit of every time there was like any kind of sale, I would go pick up yarn, and it was getting to the point where I was like doing a yarn order maybe on average every month, if that. So my goal was to bring that down a little bit. So I've been doing really well. At the beginning of February, we started with 137 units. Oh, and just to clarify, units in my mind is just like one amount of yarn, whether that's a skein, a ball, or a cake, whatever you would go to the yarn store and like buy a single amount, that is a unit for me. So I had 137 units in February. If you guys recall last month, I think I said I ended with 130. The reason why I'm up 7 is because I actually found 7 skeins just in my house, so I added that in. But I had 2 units come in, like I mentioned, that were purchased for test knits. And then I had 24 units go out. So at the end of February, I had 115 units. We had a net negative month, which is great. While March is still ongoing, as of right now, we've had 4 units go out and nothing come in. So my current yarn inventory count is 111, which is, we're getting there. We're getting to the 100. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the next couple weeks / months. But I feel good about the progress that I've been making. There's a period where I just like my stash number just kept going up, and so it feels nice for it to be coming down and actually using it up and maybe like refreshing it a little bit more. So I'm really excited about that. In terms of upcoming plans, as you know, I have to work on my Aconite tee for Audrey Borrego. That is like a work in progress / plan for the future. I actually have another test knit on the backlog. This is the Reveries tee by Herb Garden Knitwear, and this is a really beautiful silk t-shirt with like a little bit of eyelet detailing around the collar and the like cuffs of the t-shirt and the edge. And I applied for that. That test knit's not due till July, so I'm hoping to get a couple more, well, for sure my vest done and maybe like midway through my Aconite tee before going into the Reveries tee a little bit more. But I'm hoping to do that. I actually applied for that one because I had the yarn in stash. I am going to be using the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Powder. It's this really pretty, like, it's showing up brighter in camera, but it's kind of like, I don't know, like a light oatmeal color. I really like it. I hope it doesn't wash me out, but I am really excited for that t-shirt. It looks really cozy because it's like a 100% like plant-based fiber and it's a t-shirt. I think it skews more summer, so I'm hoping to cast that on maybe beginning mid-April and work on that until when it's due in July. And then I also, this one is more of like a recent want because we're transitioning into spring here. The weather is going from snow to rain, and Juby's poof, if you guys don't know, I have a standard poodle and she's got like a top knot poof. Her poof goes like into the saggy wet mess when it rains, and so I kind of want to knit her like a hat. I'll insert a photo of like what I'm like kind of thinking about, but kind of like a snoop to like put over her head to keep her ears clean, because when she's sniffing, her ears like drag around on the floor because she has like a lot of hair on her ears, and to prevent the poof from sagging. When it was raining yesterday, we tied a bandana around her and it worked fairly well, but it was kind of like slipping, so I'm thinking about doing that. We'll see if I get around to it. And then I also have been itching to cast on my Colette pullover by Sari Nordlund. The cables on that pullover have just been calling out to me, and I have the most gorgeous blue yarn for that. But again, want to get through some of my test knits because those are kind of on a deadline before I do that. But I really want to cast that on. So I saw another test knit that I kind of want to apply for the other day, but I'm like trying to reel it back. So we're gonna just go with what we're doing right now. I feel like I've been rambling a lot and I think I'm at the end of all the stuff that I wanted to talk about. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and let me know what you guys are working on as the spring weather hits the northern hemisphere. I definitely have a surge of like creative energy, even if it's just like working on projects that are ongoing right now. But I've just been in a really great knitting place. I've been knitting a lot, I've been stretching a lot, I've been taking a lot of breaks. I feel like my knitting life balance has been in like its peak in the last couple weeks, and so I'm really hoping to ride that a little bit more. It's like that perfect gross weather that I don't want to go outside, but it's like warm enough to like sit in the sun inside, and I'm just reeling it in. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now.